Well, I don't know about y'all, but I reckon it's time for Merle to sound as good as he looks. We got headers, we got mufflation devices, we got V-bands and hangers and mandrel bends and ARP fasteners. We are ready to go. So let's get to it. Got some gently used headers, slightly abused. Some Spintech 9000 muffletors. 2.5 inch Mandrel exhaust kit. Some ARP header bolts. Some Felpro gaskets. Bunch of stainless V-bands. Bunch of hangers. Alright, well, full disclosure, since this is not my first rodeo. Headers, full Mandrel exhaust, V-bands, fully TIG welded is a stretch to do in 2 days. So we're going to get as far as we can and finish the rest up next weekend. I can guarantee you, though, we're going to get some killer sound clips in this. We'll get the exhaust that's on it now, open headers. Depending how far I can get everything together, we might be able to get an initial sound through these Spintech 6000s, which are my favorite muffler. Well, actually, the 9000s have been my favorite for a long time, but they are rowdy. So being as I've grown and matured from mentally 8 years old to mentally 9.5 years old, I went down with the 6000s, be a little bit quieter since this truck is meant to go cruising through trails and have my wife in it and my kid. And the 9000s are loud. These are still going to be pretty loud. I mean, they're small, but hopefully they'll be a little bit more tolerable for them on the trail. So, like I said, we're going to get as far as we can. We'll get some killer sound clips. So we're going to be using these older Doug Thorley headers that my buddy hooked me up with. They were from like a slammed mid-60s Chevy pickup. They got a little road rash on them, but they're sealed up. They should work great. And they fit the budget, so that part's great. So according to the part number, these are 300Ys. They fit 61 to 87 trucks, but mine being an 89, still the same truck as an 87, but I'm fuel injected. So I need a spot for the O2 sensor. So the Doug Thorley headers for the O2 sensor trucks, the square bodies, have an O2 sensor bung like right here. So we're going to add our bung in on the driver's side for our O2 sensor. Then we're going to chop these bolt flanges off and V-band both of these. So first things first, we got to make this curve match this curve because we're TIG welding it, so everything needs to fit close. So we need to take out the middle here. So now we're going to drill her out. Perfect. That's the plug, so I know that my oxygen sensor that goes in there, because I haven't pulled it out of my truck, there's no way it's going to be bigger than the threads that go in the thing. So that's got clearance in there. So since we're welding dissimilar metals, right, we're doing stainless to non-stainless, we're going to use 309 rod, which its purpose is sticking stainless to mild steel. I think it's got extra nickel in it, if I want to say, but it's specifically for putting stainless to mild steel, and it's supposed to be, at least from everything I've ever read, it's supposed to be extra good with that and with high temperatures, which is perfect for exhaust. So let's get jamming. There we go. Yeah, get creative with propping this thing up. You can tell with stainless by the color how it's doing, and it's might stain pretty straw gold. It's just getting a little bit purple where my post flow is turning off a little bit soon. So we're going to turn the post flow up a little bit, solve that problem. I think that'll do, pig. And now we got a bung for our O2 sensor. So next up, we got to chop these off and line up our V-bands. So V-bands fit together really good, but one side has a little outcropping and one side's got a little recess for it. So I'm going to make these so that the outcropping is on the header side. That one fits that way, and this one. Okay, so it fits the other one a little better. We're going to find where it is, and I'm going to just take a little hammer and fit this so it sits. You can see they have this little lip in here, so that way my header tube recesses into that lip. I just need to take a little bit down right there. Okay, that's all she needed. So you want this to be as square as you can with the tube that you're doing it on. You can see I cut these pretty flush. I just cut the weld off of them. So that's going to just have to be straight enough. That looks pretty straight that way, that way. So I think we'll be good. We're going to get these tacked on. Then I will clamp the other V-band to it. The other side, we'll clamp them together to help act as like a heat sink to help prevent any warping, although I don't think they really will, but just to be safe. And then we'll weld this thing together. All right, well, we're going to kick this thing off with about the coldest of cold starts as you can get. Everything's frozen this morning. I haven't started this truck in a few weeks because it's been sitting here getting the cage. And we're going to fire it up. So this is factory exhaust manifolds to the catalytic converter, and then cut off after that, because the way the old exhaust was routed, I had to get all that crap out of the way to do all my suspension and shocks and all that stuff. So this is factory manifolds, cat. So we're keeping it short because I don't want to get all that stuff hot because I got to take it off right now. So we're going to pull that off. Hopefully these headers fit without too much work, and then we'll test open headers. Well, to get the last bolt out for this bracket, it's buried up against the block back there, so we got to pull the pulley off, pull the pump out, or at least out of the way, so that we can get this bracket out of the way so that we can get this off. So this is going to be really boring. I'll catch back up with you when we're further along. All right, well, we finally got the manifold out, everything out of the way. So we're going to clean up these gasket surfaces. And I just wanted to mention something real quick. When you're cleaning up these gasket surfaces, these are sealing surfaces. They need to stay flat. So don't go all crazy with like sandpaper and all that stuff to where you could make it where it's wavy, because that can just cause problems for you and make you cause leaks later. So I've got a little roll-lock with a Scotch-Brite pad on it. That's what I'm going to use. Otherwise, I mean, you could use a high grit sandpaper, but just by hand go slow, or a Scotch-Brite pad, something like that. Just don't go crazy with it, or you can cause yourself problems. And obviously, there's no way this header's coming in from the top. So I'll roll up under there, shove that header on through the bottom, come in the back door, if you will, and get her gasketed up and get her installed and move on to the other side. All right, well, we got the header fed up in there. I'm going to get the bolts started, and then we're going to get these outside two bolts started, and then this has notches so we can slip that guy in there, get the rest of them lined up, and we're going to tackle, not really tackle, we're going to discuss one of the common dividing points on the interwebs, because we're going not into an aluminum head, so it's not a dissimilar metal issue. But do you put anti-seize on header bolts? I understand both sides of this argument. I understand the group of people that say, yes, put some on so that they don't seize in there because it sucks when header bolts seize in. And I understand the side that says, dude, header bolts loosen up all the freaking time. Why on earth would you put anti-seize on them? So we're going to solve this scientifically. I'm going to put a tiny dab of high temp anti-seize on these, just to help keep it from locking in. And if they loosen up all the time and it turns into a problem, then we'll know somewhat definitively that that was a mistake, and we'll call it a win either way because we all learned together. All right, well, let that be a lesson to you. Apparently, the back one is way easier to do from the bottom. Let's see if I can fandangle this down here. I got these weird little bracketies in the way. I might need to do this a little bit different. Yeah, ain't gonna work. All right, new plan. I'm gonna undo the front one, slip the gasket in, get in there. There we go. Now we can pop her on and start working the rest of these bolts in. Oh my Lord. It's touching my oil filter now, but when it tightens down, dude, if this just goes in and clears, I don't think that's ever happened in my life. But I feel like if this header was meant for this many years, and unlike Ford, Chevy's smart, and they kind of just kept stuff the same for long periods of time, you know, I feel like they would know, because that's just the standard big old Chevy oil filter on there. So I'll bet when this thing sucks down, it's gonna pop that bottom out and we'll have some clearance. Have some clearance, Clarence. I went with the 1-inch bolts because this is a thicker flange on these Doug Thorley headers, which is something that I really like. Although my main draw to them is the tri-Y design, so you kind of get the benefits of a long tube, right, which gives you top end horsepower, and the benefits of a short tube, which typically tend to lean more towards low end torque. So, kind of like the best of both worlds, Doug Thorley. If you want to sponsor me with some new headers instead of these beat up ones that still work because they last forever. But these are definitely my favorite. Back in the day when I had my old Toyota on 37s, I had a tri-Y header on that. Like, they're just, for good streetable power, if you're not chasing like max horsepower, I think they're the way to go for most people, in all honesty. But right now, it's just the game of how can I get a wrench on these and still fit around my header tubes. But holy crap, these things look sick. This is gonna sound so good. So good. Alright, well, here we are. This side went in good. We got our power steering pump back on. I don't have my belt hooked up yet. This side all clears on the top. This side a little bit tighter. Here we are underneath with the frickin' Thunderbringers, but you can see I'm right on this big old starter, so probably gonna need to go to a mini starter and blanket it, and I gotta do something about tucking that wiring up because it's rubbing on it right now, but that ain't no reason why we can't fire this thing up and bring the thunder. Because I don't have a lift, so we're just gonna have to do it down and dirty in the gravel. But I got a plywood board. I got a maximum comfort plywood board, so we're cool there. So the first thing we're gonna do, we need to connect these to the mufflers. So step one is you have to break your mufflers in. We gotta break this one in two. Okay, mufflers broke in. We are installing Spintech 6000s. So we're offset in, center out, because I figured the way that I'm gonna have to lay these out in here, offset in's gonna be our best bet. So I can tuck it over towards the frame rail, because I got to get around the transfer case on this side, and I got plenty of room on this side. So really, I should start on the harder side once we're going, but we're going to get all this laid out first. So we need to locate our mufflers. I'm going to take this piece of angle iron and clamp it to our frame. Now, we can clamp our mufflers to this. Pretty sure this is where we're going to want them. And then clip up from there. So we're going to have to jog around this. I'm thinking almost we'll get this side. Normally I do the harder side first, but I know this is pretty much where I'm going to want them. So we need to step this up and straight into here. So we'll have to do a couple little wiggles around to get around this. I'm making it a point to go around the factory cross members. So long term here, this is getting a new, Merle's getting a new transmission, a 4-to-1 underdrive, and then a twin stick 205. So all this is going to end up moving back like 10 or 11 inches. Sometime later this year or the beginning of next year. Just kind of depends how it rounds out, because I want to do the Rubicon and Fordyce with our stock transfer case set up, and then once we put the new stuff in, I want to go do them again, so that way we can kind of see, fully see the difference. Like same trails, hard trails, and all that, and then do them again with a much steeper gear reduction. So for the interest of science, we're going to space them out like that. So this exhaust isn't the final form exhaust. I'm going to have to redo it to go around what this truck evolves into at the point that we put this stuff in. Yeah, we're going to make an S-bend first to come up. So if you don't have the fancy tools for making perfect center cuts, because if you cut mandrel bends like crooked, it's not round anymore, and it won't line up good with your next piece of bend, and it'll look all janky. And we don't want that. We want it to look good. So I'm going to show you a trick. You can do, I learned to do it with zip ties. I've heard you can do it with like a hair tie too, like a ponytail tie. But you wrap your zip tie around it. Get in the hole. And now, as long as you kind of spin it as you move it, it'll naturally align with the tube. So you can keep your cuts to where they're going to line up. So we're going to split this guy about in half. And I'm going to do this to do my step up, because it's not going to come, it'll make it a little bit taller than that 4.5 that we want. But I'm going to have to clock it sideways a little bit to get around the step up in the cross member, because originally your exhaust would go under the cross member, right? You got that big Y pipe, and then that merges and goes under the cross member, and your exhaust hangs down all low. We're going to tuck this all up high and keep it out of the rocks. So find our midpoint, mark it. And then you run that to the side, and what do you know? We got a nice clean line to follow. So another tip when you're doing this is don't set your either zip tie or your hair tie directly where you want your cut to be. Set it slightly to the side, because when you cut it, and we're going to do this with basic hand tools, so we're going to cut this with a 4.5-inch angle grinder. If you offset it a tiny bit, that thickness of your cut will put it where it needs to be. So now, when we match these up, there's our S-bend. So I'm going to clean these up. You can absolutely clean these up and take your time cutting this. Understand going into this, if you're going to do your own exhaust, this is not a one weekend project if you want it to be a good job. You can cobble some garbage together in a weekend, but we don't do that. So clean it up. You can see, the more time you take, right, the more precise you are with your cuts, line up, the better your fitment's going to be, right? And, if you're MIG welding this and there's a tiny little gap here and there, it's not really going to be that big of a problem, right? You're MIG welding it. If you're going to TIG weld it like I'm going to, I need these to be as tight and fit as I can. So you can absolutely clean these up with an angle grinder and a flap wheel. I have a belt sander, so I'm going to do it on the belt sander in the interest of time, because this is already going to take forever anyways. Alright, so we got to go around this cross member, which it does. I'll bring you bring you in. See? So you're here. We're stepped around this. All right, well, I don't know if it's just the nature of the beast with these, because I've used this same company for stainless exhaust before, but they actually lose quite a bit on the bends on these. Well, that's where we're at with Merle here. I had started doing the exhaust, but that didn't go so hot. So I ordered it from the same place I always get stainless steel kits from, and they always fit great, but I got regular mild steel because I know when we do the drivetrain upgrades at some point here in the near future, and then I end up stretching the rear wheelbase back a little bit further, then I'm basically going to have to make exhaust version 2.0 at that point and redo it. So I didn't really want to pony up for stainless 2 times. So basically, the Mandrels, they ain't Mandrels. So none of it fits right, and I could power through it and make it work, but that's just not how I do things. If I'm going to spend the time to do Mandrel bend exhaust, I want Mandrel bend exhaust, right? So I reached out to the company. I'm not going to put them on blast. I've used them for a ton of stuff over the years. I've always been super happy with them, so I'm sure we'll get it worked out. And then today I got all buttered up working on this guy. He's going to paint to get the roof painted that they never fixed before. It had some other paint issues before. And then we're going to fix the fender that my toolbox politely fell over into during that storm. So I had to do a new starter in this thing, a new carb because the old one was all jacked up, fix some wires, get the brakes working right on the trailer. It basically ate up my whole day. So such is life, right? That's how it goes. So that's where we're at. I think next weekend, I'm pretty sure I won't have whatever I have ironed out with them for the exhaust stuff for the Merlenator here. But I think next weekend we're going to start plumbing the onboard air, get that started worked in, which might actually end up being better because I'm kind of going to need to work the exhaust around it a little bit so that it's all packaged nice. So next weekend, onboard air, and then following that it'll either be buttoning up roll cage stuff or finishing out this exhaust. And if you don't get started, just handling issues as they arise, you'll never get finished.